Welcome to the medieval dentist's chair, aka your worst nightmare. So, you've got a toothache. In 2025, that's annoying, maybe even painful. But hey, no big deal. You call your dentist, book a slot, get a quick x-ray, and 30 minutes later, you're sipping a smoothie and showing off your fresh white fillings on Instagram. Now imagine the same toothache, but it's the year 1320. You're a peasant, or worse, a king. Spoiler alert, your royal blood doesn't protect you from excruciating dental agony. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where the only anesthesia was prayer, and the closest thing to a dentist was the guy who also cut your hair, drained your blood, and possibly dabbled in blacksmithing on weekends. In medieval Europe, having a toothache wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a full-blown horror movie playing out in your mouth. Painkillers? Nope. Antibiotics? Try holy water? Dental surgery? More like medieval torture with extra screaming. And if you were lucky enough to be royalty, congratulations. Your court physician probably still thought your pain was caused by imbalanced humors or a demonic possession in your molars. This isn't just about rotting teeth and medieval misery, though don't worry, we've got plenty of that. This is the story of how humanity tried and failed again to battle one of the most ancient enemies of all, dental pain. From rusty forceps and bloody extractions to cures involving urine, garlic, and Latin chants, we're diving headfirst into the toothy hellscape that our ancestors called healthcare. So sit back, clench your jaw, and thank every deity you believe in that you were born after the invention of Novocaine. Because trust me, by the time we're done, you'll never complain about a dentist's drill again. Ready? Let's open wide and go. Medieval dentists were basically butchers with bonus blood. All right, so you've got a molar that feels like it's being stabbed by Satan himself. Who do you turn to in 14th century Europe? A certified dental professional? LOL. That concept didn't even exist. The term dentist wasn't really a thing yet. Your choices were, let's say, creative. You could visit a barber. Yes, the dude who cuts hair also pulls teeth. You came in for a trim and left with half your mouth missing. A monk, because who better to handle your dental crisis than a guy whose main qualification is praying really hard? A local butcher, no joke. He's already got knives and strong hands, right? Or your neighbor's cousin who once saw someone pull a tooth and now thinks he's a pro. Medical licensing? Hey? No degrees, no sterilized tools, and no idea what bacteria were. You've got a toothache? Well, let me grab this rusty iron hook and see what I can do. Just bite down on this leather strap and scream into the void. Barber surgeons were the go-to tooth guys in most towns. These were the multitaskers of medieval life. They shaved beards, lanced boils, performed minor surgeries, and, surprise, yanked teeth like they were harvesting potatoes. Why? Because they had tools, brute strength, and most importantly, no fear of blood. Whether or not they had steady hands was another matter entirely. And don't get it twisted, even kings had to deal with these amateur hour-tooth wranglers. Royal physicians might have had access to more herbs and scrolls, but their dental knowledge was barely a step above bloodletting and humming Ave Maria. So the next time you complain that your dentist didn't give you a lollipop, just remember, in the Middle Ages, you were lucky if your dentist didn't kill you by accident, or on purpose. Depends on how bad your breath was. Tools of the trade, aka instruments of medieval dental terror. Let's talk gear. Because if you think modern dentists use scary tools, wait until you meet their medieval counterparts. Picture this. No stainless steel, no sterilization, no delicate precision, just heavy metal. Literally. The average tooth puller's toolkit looked like something out of a dungeon, and honestly, it was kind of a dungeon experience. The main star of the show? The dental pelican. Sounds cute, right? Like a bird? Nope. It's a horrifying iron instrument that got its name because it kind of resembled a pelican's beak, if the pelican was a serial killer. The idea was to wedge one end between your gum and tooth, then twist and lever that bad boy right out. Did it crack jaws? Yes. Did it snap teeth in half mid-pull? You bet. Did people die from shock or infection afterward? Absolutely. Then there were the tooth keys, which are just as fun as they sound. If your idea of fun is wrenching bones out of someone's skull, these were twisted into the mouth, clamped around a tooth, and then violently rotated like opening a rusty treasure chest. The treasure was usually a shattered root and a lifetime of nightmares. Still not terrified. Let's not forget the forceps, big, brutal metal tongs that looked more appropriate for blacksmithing than oral hygiene. Combine that with zero anesthesia and a complete lack of knowledge about gum structure, and you've basically got torture with extra bleeding. And here's the best part. None of these tools were cleaned. Reuse was the norm. You might be next in line after some guy who died from sepsis an hour ago. No gloves, no masks, just iron, wood, and suffering. Medieval dentistry wasn't about saving the tooth. It was about ending the pain, by any means necessary. And often, the method was worse than the pain. Pain relief? You mean screaming louder. Let's get one thing straight. Pain relief in the Middle Ages was basically a myth. You didn't numb the area. You numbed your soul by screaming until you passed out or bit your tongue in half. There were no injections, no laughing gas, and no chill music playing in the background. If you were lucky, maybe someone handed you a cloth soaked in wine. If you were rich, maybe it had opium in it. If you were poor, well, enjoy gnawing on a stick and seeing God. The concept of anesthesia as we know it didn't really show up until the 19th century. So in medieval times, the idea of a pain-free extraction was right up there with unicorns and reliable plumbing. Pure fantasy. Here's what they did have. Alcohol, a medieval classic. Chug some mead, ale, or wine until you can't feel your legs. Bonus, it also made you bleed more. Herbal concoctions, mandrake root, belladonna, henbane, basically whatever poisonous plant someone swore took the edge off. They usually didn't work. Sometimes they killed you. Trade-off? Prayers and chants. Because when you're gripping a wooden chair while a dude in a bloody apron jams iron into your mouth, nothing says comfort like Latin verses about eternal salvation. Biting on leather. That's not metaphor. That was the strategy. Clamp down on a belt or cloth while they yank the tooth out. If you screamed too loud, someone might gag you, for courtesy. And let's not forget, infection was waiting right around the corner. With no antiseptics or antibiotics, even a successful extraction could be a death sentence. So while you're writhing in pain, just know that the worst might still be on the way. People didn't fear the toothache itself. They feared the cure. And honestly, who could blame them? Cavities? Nah, that's just demons in your teeth. So you've got a hole in your tooth. It hurts. It's turning black. It smells like something died inside your mouth. In 2025, that's a cavity. Quick drill. Filling. Done. In medieval Europe? That's not decay. That's the devil setting up camp in your molar. See, people back then didn't know what caused cavities. They didn't have microscopes. No concept of bacteria. Germ theory was still centuries away. So they made their best guess. Must be tiny hell beasts gnawing at your soul through your enamel. Some literally believed in tooth worms. Yes, actual worms living inside the teeth. You had a hole? That's the worm's home. Logical, right? As for treatment? Let's just say fillings weren't a thing. No fancy resins, no dental cement, no composite bonding. The options were ignore it until the pain becomes unbearable. Rub something on it, like garlic, ash, or crushed herbs, because nothing says dental hygiene like spicy mold paste. Burn it out. Yeah, literally heat a metal rod and cauterize the cavity. Medieval root canal, baby. Rip the whole tooth out. The medieval go-to move for pretty much everything. Sometimes people filled cavities with things like beeswax or honey, thinking it would seal the demon inside. Spoiler, it didn't. It just made your mouth sticky and slightly more cursed. Oh, and hygiene? Forget about it. Most people didn't even brush. Toothpaste wasn't invented yet. Some used crushed bone, ashes, or even, Yes, urine. Don't ask. So while your molars slowly rotted from the inside, the best-case scenario was that it eventually fell out. Worst case? It festered, infected your jaw, and the infection spread to your brain. All because no one knew that sugar plus bacteria equals rot. They just thought your tooth was angry. Moral of the story, next time you get a filling, thank science. And yes, tooth extraction, live, loud, and bloody. So you've tried garlic, wine, prayers, and maybe even shoved a burning stick in your mouth. But the pain's still there. You've got one option left: rip the damn tooth out. And oh boy, in the Middle Ages, this wasn't just dental work. It was a full-on horror show with blood, screams, and sometimes death. Welcome to medieval tooth extraction, the most brutal fix for a problem no one understood. First, let's get this straight. Nobody cared about saving your tooth. Modern dentistry is all about conservation. Medieval dentistry was about one thing: ending the pain, fast and dirty. If the pain didn't kill you, the cure might. So how did it go down? Step 1. Sit or don't. You might be strapped to a chair, held down by friends, or just kneeling while gripping a table. No reclining seats, no soothing music, no nurse asking if you're doing okay. You weren't. Step 2. Bite this: a leather strap, a piece of wood, your sleeve, something to bite so you don't shatter your own jaw while they work. Step 3. Metal meets mouth. The barber surgeon grabs a tooth key or forceps, or worse, some homemade hook, jams it into your mouth, twists, yanks, and prays the whole tooth comes out in one piece. Spoiler, it usually didn't. Step 4. Screaming. Lots. Office screaming, there were no antibiotics. If part of the root broke off, it stayed, festering and potentially infecting the jawbone. Oh, and infection? Extremely common. People died from abscesses and post-extraction fevers all the time. You could literally die from a bad pull. Let's not forget, sometimes they pulled the wrong tooth. Hurts on the left? Yank. Still hurts? Let's try another one. By the time they were done, you had no pain, because you had no teeth, and this was considered standard care. Even kings screamed, even queens bled. So next time you lie in a cushy chair with numbing gel and Netflix, remember, your ancestors got their teeth pulled by sweaty men with iron tongs and zero mercy. And if they survived, they probably celebrated with soup. Forever. Even kings couldn't escape the toothache nightmare. You might think royal blood means magic healing powers, but nope. In the Middle Ages, even kings and queens were at the mercy of rotten teeth and unbearable pain. No amount of gold, jewels, or fancy robes could buy them a painless extraction or a cavity-free smile. Take King Henry VIII, the guy famous for his 6 wives and apparently 6 missing teeth. He suffered from chronic dental problems, and it's said his rotting teeth caused him constant agony. No royal dentist, they barely existed, could fix him. They just pulled teeth and hoped for the best. Or King Louis XIV, the Sun King of France, who reportedly had terrible toothaches throughout his reign. His court physicians were basically using the same brutal techniques as everyone else: forceps, cauterization, and prayers. Why no better care? Because dental knowledge was still garbage, and even wealth couldn't summon modern tools or anesthesia. Royalty might have had access to the best barber surgeons or monks with special herbs, but the methods were the same medieval torture devices disguised as dentistry. When a king screamed during extraction, it was a scandal, but pain was pain. Sometimes they even tried miracle cures involving strange concoctions, magic amulets, or holy relics, because science was stuck in the Dark Ages. The takeaway? Money couldn't save your molars. The rich and powerful weren't immune to the horror of medieval tooth pain. If your royal smile was bright, it was probably thanks to luck or death before the next extraction. Dental hygiene? What's that? Imagine brushing your teeth every day. Sounds normal now, right? Well, in the Middle Ages, most people had no clue what dental hygiene even meant. Toothbrushes as we know them didn't exist. Toothpaste was a mystery, And the idea of cleaning your teeth regularly? Forget it. Most folks used whatever they could find, sticks, cloths, or even their fingers to wipe their teeth and gums. Sometimes they chewed on twigs, preferably from aromatic trees like rosemary or mint, hoping to freshen their breath. Spoiler alert, it didn't work that well. Some tried rinsing their mouths with water, wine, or vinegar, but honestly, the tooth decay was already running wild. Sugar was rare, but honey was common, and the sticky sweetness just fed the rot. And since most people didn't brush or floss, food particles stuck around, inviting bacteria to party in their mouths. Toothpaste? Nope. The closest you got was powders made from crushed bones, charcoal, herbs, and sometimes even crushed oyster shells. Sure, sounds tasty. People believed these abrasives helped scrape plaque off their teeth, but honestly, they probably just scratched their gums and made things worse. The wealthy had access to better concoctions, including mixtures of herbs, spices, and even perfumes. But even then, none of these remedies prevented cavities or gum disease. And dental checkups? A joke? You only went to a dentist if you were in serious pain. So the morale, medieval dental hygiene, was basically a myth. Teeth rotted, gums bled, and everyone just hoped for the best. No wonder toothaches were considered part of life's suffering, right up there with plague and war. Folk remedies. Because science was a luxury. When the toothache hit in the Middle Ages, people didn't run to a clinic. They ran to Grandma, the village witch, or some random guy who swore he had the cure. Medical science was basically a joke, so folk remedies were the real treatment. Spoiler, most of them were ridiculous, painful, or just plain dangerous. Here's a quick rundown of what people actually tried. Garlic and onions. Smashing these into a paste and stuffing it into the aching tooth was a common fix, because nothing soothes pain like setting your mouth on fire with raw garlic. Herbal mixtures, mandrake root, henbane, and nightshade were popular. These plants are poisonous, but hey, maybe knocking you out was the goal. Pain relief by unconsciousness. Honey and vinegar, a sticky, sour combo used to clean the tooth. Didn't help much, but at least it was tasty. Urine rinses. Yep, some believed that rinsing with urine would disinfect the mouth. Yubayu. Science says no. Hot irons. If the pain was unbearable, cauterizing the gums or the tooth itself with a red-hot iron was an option. Instant burn, instant pain relief. Kind of. Prayer and charms. Since the church ruled everything, many just prayed, carried amulets, or wore relics blessed by a priest. No painkillers, but divine intervention was the hope. Basically, these treatments were a crapshoot. You might get relief, you might lose a tooth, or you might die from poisoning. But hey, when you have nothing else, you try everything. So next time you pop a painkiller, remember, your ancestors tried rubbing their teeth with poison and drinking pee for relief. Progress. When science failed, God took over. Religion and dental pain. In medieval Europe, the line between medicine and religion was blurrier than your vision during a tooth extraction. If your tooth hurt, it might not just be a biological problem. It could be a sin, a punishment from God, or worse, a demonic possession. And who better to treat that than the local priest or monk? Doctors and barbers? Sure, but when pain hit hard, people turned to God. The church was the ultimate authority and often the only health care available. The idea that suffering was a form of spiritual cleansing was widespread, so enduring your toothache might actually be good for your soul. Beat that modern medicine. Some common religious treatments included prayers and masses. People would pray non-stop, asking saints for relief. Saint Apollonia was the go-to patron saint for dental pain. Her relics were believed to cure toothaches if you kissed or touched them. Holy water rinses. Instead of antiseptics, people rinsed their mouths with water, blessed by a priest, hoping to wash out the devil's work. Relics and amulets. Carrying or wearing a piece of a saint's bone or cloth was thought to ward off pain or evil spirits. Pilgrimages. Some made long, painful journeys to holy sites seeking miraculous cures. Confession and penance. Sometimes confessing your sins was prescribed to ease physical pain because your toothache was probably caused by your wicked ways. Needless to say, none of this helped with the actual infection or decay. But hey, spiritual comfort counts for something, right? So, in the Middle Ages, your toothache wasn't just a dental problem. It was a cosmic battle between good and evil. And if you survived it, you got a story to tell. Early scientists and their half-baked tooth ideas. As the Middle Ages trudged on, a few brave souls tried to drag dentistry out of the Dark Ages, literally. These early scientists and physicians began poking around teeth with curiosity, trying to figure out what actually caused tooth pain beyond the obvious evil spirits theory. One pioneer was Guy de Chauliac, a French surgeon from the 14th century who wrote one of the most important medical texts of his time. He was among the first to describe tooth extraction techniques in detail and to suggest that infections came from the tooth itself, not just bad luck or demons. Revolutionary, right? Well, kind of. Guy and his contemporaries still had no clue about bacteria, but they started moving away from pure superstition. Their treatments combined herbal remedies with brutal extractions and cauterizations, with occasional advice to keep the mouth clean, a radical thought back then. Meanwhile, Leonardo da Vinci sketched human jaws and teeth with astonishing accuracy, but his insights didn't reach most doctors until centuries later. Same with Paracelsus, who hinted that chemicals might treat disease, a far cry from stabbing teeth with iron hooks. Progress was painfully slow. Most practitioners were stuck with medieval tools and beliefs, but these early thinkers planted the seeds for modern dentistry. It would take centuries before tooth decay was understood scientifically and effective treatments became common. So the takeaway? Even in the gloom of the Middle Ages, curiosity fought ignorance. And those half-baked ideas? They were the ancestors of your painless dental checkups. The first fillings. Medieval patchwork for your teeth. Imagine losing a tooth and being told, just pull it out, because that was the norm. But slowly, some clever folks started thinking, wait, maybe we can save the tooth? Enter the early, often hilarious attempts at dental fillings. In medieval Europe, the concept of filling a cavity was almost non-existent. If you had a hole in your tooth, the usual advice was extraction, no questions asked. But some doctors and alchemists tinkered with substances to plug those nasty gaps. They used everything from beeswax, resins, pitch, and even metal scraps like gold or lead. Yes, lead, which, surprise, isn't great for your health. The idea was to cover the cavity to stop pain and prevent food from getting stuck. Spoiler, it didn't always work and sometimes made things worse. Sometimes fillings were just decorative. Rich nobles could afford gold inlays that were more about showing off wealth than fixing decay. Meanwhile, common folk got whatever sticky goo the local barber surgeon had lying around. The materials were crude and lacked sterilization, so infections were common. But these attempts were important first steps towards modern restorative dentistry. Alongside fillings, there were efforts to clean teeth better, though the tools and pastes were still primitive. Some experimented with powders made from crushed shells or herbs to scrape teeth, but nothing compared to today's floss and fluoride. So while medieval fillings were basically medieval duct tape for teeth, they showed early signs of dental care evolving beyond pure destruction. Birth of the dentist. From barber to tooth doctor. In the beginning, there was chaos. No dentists, no hygiene standards, just barbers, blacksmiths, and monks poking around in your mouth with whatever tools they had. But slowly, the profession of dentistry started to take shape, kind of like the slow evolution of your wisdom teeth. Painful, but inevitable. By the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance, certain barber surgeons specialized in tooth extractions and basic dental care. They were the original multitaskers, cutting hair, pulling teeth, and sometimes even performing minor surgeries. Not exactly the dream team, but they filled a vital gap. The first dedicated dental practitioners started to emerge in Europe, though their education was minimal compared to modern standards. They learned through apprenticeships, passing down knowledge from master to student, often mixing medical practices with folklore and superstition. The word dentist itself wasn't common until much later, but these early tooth doctors began offering services beyond just pulling teeth, cleaning, filling, and advising on tooth care. By the 16th and 17th centuries, specialized dental tools improved. The tooth key was invented, a terrifying instrument designed specifically to twist and yank teeth out. Not exactly gentle, but more effective than pliers. The first dental clinics were crude, often part of barbershops or small apothecaries, but they laid the groundwork for modern dentistry. People actually paid for tooth care, not just extraction, showing a shift in awareness. So while medieval dentistry was still mostly brutal and scary, it was evolving from pure torture to a profession with skill, tools, and a hint of science. Medieval teeth, lessons from the dental dark ages. So here we are at the end of our medieval tooth saga. What have we learned? That the Middle Ages were a time when tooth pain wasn't just a nuisance, it was a full-blown nightmare. Cavities were demonic real estate, tooth extraction was a blood sport, and dental hygiene was basically a fairy tale. The rich and powerful didn't get off easy. Kings screamed through their extractions like peasants, and their golden fillings were more for bling than health. Folk remedies ranged from garlic torture to pea rinses, and religious faith was the only painkiller many had. Early scientists and barber surgeons started laying the groundwork for modern dentistry, but it was a slow, painful process. Teeth were ripped, burned, and patched with questionable materials, often with deadly consequences. Fast forward to today, modern dentistry is a miracle of science and comfort. We have anesthesia, sterile tools, and actual understanding of what causes cavities. We brush, floss, and visit dentists without fear of losing half our jaws. So next time you're sitting comfortably in the dentist's chair, remember your medieval ancestors who faced tooth pain with a hot iron, a rusty hook, and a prayer. Medieval dentistry? More like medieval torture. But hey, they did what they could. And that's the tooth, the whole tooth, and nothing but the tooth.